Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hi, everybody. Jackie Woodside here with another episode of the Conscious Living Podcast. We are here at the Conscious Living Podcast with just a huge commitment to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. So I am so glad that you joined us again today for another really thought-provoking and inspiring time with someone who I've just recently met and come upon, but who already feels like a kindred soul and a dear friend. So I want to introduce you to Zalah today. Zalah is a Canadian spiritual teacher and businessman, entrepreneur, filled with amazing ideas and a huge spiritual following in his region. And this is the time that Zalah has decided to begin bringing his teachings out into the world. And I could not be more honored and humbled and excited to be one of those people that's bringing Zalah's thought leadership and spiritual inspiration into the world. So Zalah, I know you and I both have a huge commitment to awakening and to conscious living. And so I just, first of all, want to welcome you to the Conscious Living Podcast. And secondly, thank you for your generosity of time to be here with me and with all of our listeners to dive into this topic of conscious living.
Namaste.
Namaste. Yeah, thank
Yes.
you. So Zalah, if you could, I gave a brief little intro, but my goodness, there's such depth to you. Do you want to just say a little bit more about yourself and who you are in the world and what you're committed to, what you're up to now?
Sure. But first, let me state, Jackie, that I'm thankful for you being so graceful in inviting me to your show. I'm honored. That I am. Okay. You're a real contribution to humanity with what you're doing. And I'm recently new to the electronic and social media. So this is a real treat for me. So let me restate. I'm new on this electronic media scene. And I'm just coming out of the closet, Jackie, after 20 years of quietly teaching the wisdom of the ages, quietly teaching. Person to person, weekly, private to small classes. So let me say in the last 6 months, I've just agreed to even have my picture put on the website at thecft.ca. So if you want to find out more about me, just go to thecft.ca and you'll be able to see that. And so, going forward, I want to thank you for what you do for the world with your program. Especially because, before I cover me, we're all here walking each other home. Back to the other half of the sky. We're all here helping as much. And again, I'm humbled today to be on your program. I've been the best kept secret in North America, teaching the wisdom of the ages and not really coming out public like we're doing today. So, I can tell you today, I speak from my point of ignorance to you, and I say thank you for that. And I mean, it's I guess I should cover a little bit of my background, and I don't want to take up too much time doing that.
And also tell people what CFT is, what it stands for, as you talk a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. The CFT stands for the Center for Transformation.
Yeah.
We're located here in Calgary, Canada, and we hold regular electronic classes now, courtesy of COVID. Before they were in-person classes. And we hold retreats as well. Prior to COVID, we held 3-day and up to 7-day retreats in the mountains, in the Canadian Rockies. And we've been doing this for a long time, actually. So if you go to the cft.ca, you'll be able to read a lot more about me than I'm going to cover here. But basically, a businessman, an entrepreneur, author, author of 3 books, father, grandfather, and businessman, as I said. And I was tired of selling my soul for the corporate goal. So I quit and I jumped out of life. I was in the financial markets and I was with a shareholder in the largest investment firm in Canada. And I decided that that was the end of my career. And so I basically retired from that industry when I was 40 years old. I had, honestly, I sold my soul for the corporate goal. So if you go to our site, you'll be able to see my TEDx talk that I did on this. When TEDx approached me, they said, "What would you talk about?" And I said, "Well, I talk about how personal integrity affects the environment." And they said, "What? How so?" And I said, "Well, I can give you a précis right here, just off my heart." And that was it. They said, "Come on out, stand on stage. Can you deliver?" I said, "I think so." So as a result, when I quit what I was doing, I jumped out of life for 7 years. I went and studied under a spiritual teacher who took me 2 years to realize that he was a master, two masters. So I never tell anybody where I went to and who I studied under, because there's a code of true teachers, TTs as I call them, true teachers, or the other term that I like to use for a true teacher, somebody that's studied and knows their way around all of these 7 energy centers and can tell you all the properties of them. They're called, in my world, they're called maestros. And a maestro is a conductor of the dynamics of life and is in tune with it, his own life, and in other lives as well that come. And so it's a musical thing, because each of us has an instrument. We call it our body. And inside that body, there are organs to get in tune with life. And so that's a whole separate teaching within itself. So hopefully that gives you a little bit about my background, but I work on the basis that it's time for us to all come together right now.
Yeah.
We need to wake up, because how we wake up is with conscious choices. And we're here to assist each other, and we're here to assist the planet. And right now is the time to do that, because all true teachers know that it's the quickening. And the quickening, Jackie, just magnifies where you're at. I mean, if you're into fear, guilt, and shame, it's magnified. If you're into worry, Jackie, it's magnified. And I say, worry is a prayer for what you don't want.
Right.
And
Right.
the only safe place to be, Jackie, is peace and love. It's magnified. And if you're in peace and love, actually the byproduct is that it triggers a fertile imagination. But you gotta be at peace.
Beautiful.
That's key. Anyways, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Zalah. I guess one of the things about myself is that I'm just really hardcore practical. And so, conscious living, I want to dive into the living a little bit, because you said something that I find really fascinating. First of all, you left your career at 40, which was really, really young. So that's stunning. And then secondly, you said you're a father and a grandfather. Assume that means you're also married, or were at one point.
Yep.
And you said you went away for 7 years. Now, I don't know about you, Zalah, but if I just, sent my spouse a little text and said, "Hey, I'm going to check out for a few years, hold down the fort," I don't know how well that would go. So do you mind backing up to that piece? I'm just curious.
Sure.
On a practical level, because we are talking about conscious living. You had to live through that. Your family had to live through that. Your
Yes.
Family finances needed to live through that. So just flesh that out a little bit, and
Sure.
the practicality of it, but then also the consciousness of it that compelled you to make such a, to me, radical choice.
Well, what I was going through at the time was that I was selling my soul for the corporate goal, making a lot of money. And what happened is that I found that money doesn't make you happy. And for me, it made some real unconscious choices more unconscious. And it was at a point where a ceiling occurs, and I was being held there. And what I say is that word should be spelled HELLED. I was held there until I woke up, and I realized this wasn't the answer. So I left, and I studied under this master for 7 years. A lot of the time was in nature. And so I had a great wife at the time, but I, through unconscious choices prior to going away, had a limited tolerance level And so when I came back, um, it was a different life for me, and it was a different life for everybody around me. But one thing's for sure, that I got to a point, and I think a lot of people are probably getting to this point now in evolution on the planet, where they just can't keep doing what they were doing. They know they have to go within. They know that they have to put their spiritual connect back on the table. And for a lot of people that I talk to, it's actually insanity, because their spiritual unconnect is such a severe disconnect that it just means that things just don't make sense and they can't figure it out. And so at the center for transformation, what I say is we make sense out of life. We make sense out of life. And it's not about religion. It's not about following the teacher. It's about following your heart in life. And so this isn't a facility where you drink the Kool-Aid and follow the teacher. Au contraire. It's about getting you to think, because destiny is not a matter of chances, Jackie. It's a matter of choices, conscious choices. And in order to make conscious choices, quite often, you have to slow down. The silence level, the stillness level has to go up. And a lot of people don't want to do that in a busy world. And so as a result, people are just running faster and faster, and things are not working, because it's like, for a lot of people right now, it's like having bald tires on your car going uphill, and you're going on the speedo 80 miles an hour, but you're sliding backwards. And you're going, look at all this effort I'm putting out. What's going on? Well, a lot of people right now are in the divine squeeze. And the divine squeeze, I believe, Jackie, is where you got to go right up the center here. And things on the illusion that are, if that's negative, that's positive, and if that's the past, that's the future. It's most people are getting squeezed to reconnect. And if you resist, it's like the divine turns up the heat.
So
you say,
if you resist, the divine turns up the heat. I'm going to just assume a lot of people are experiencing that right now. So what does that look like, Zalah? And I have more questions going back to that 7 years, but I want to go with where we are right now.
Yeah, it's okay. We can go back there whenever you want to. And so my point is that it's a time to reconnect, because we're in the quickening. The quickening is where this huge, and all true teachers know, this huge wave is coming through the universe, and wherever you're at is magnified. And so it's time to just stop what you're doing. Look, listen, and just stop, because sooner or later you realize you're head down, bum up. You're pushing the pencil and pushing the ink and pushing business as fast as you can, but yet you're killing yourself. You're killing yourself, because as you get older, and you realize this once you get a few decades under you, as you get older, your ROE is really important. Let me explain. In the financial world, ROE means return on equity.
Oh, okay.
In the spiritual world, it's return on energy. And so as you get older, it doesn't serve if you're putting out a foot worth of energy and you're getting an inch back. It should be the other way around as you get older, where you're putting in an inch energy and getting a foot back in return, because your prime earning years are over. And the best way I know to do that is by getting reconnected spiritually. And you can then trigger your creative abilities. And if not, there's a whole bunch of ceilings of what you need to own. And I say, if you get into the teaching, and by the way, it's not my teaching. I didn't create it. I didn't invent it. It's the teaching. It's the wisdom of the ages. What I say is the teaching doesn't change you. The teaching takes you to where your ceilings are. And if you have enough love and courage, you can perforate the ceiling and turn it into a new floor of a new reality for yourself. Then the teaching transforms you. So that's quite a premise if you understand that. Because the people that I teach, I tell them right up front, the teaching does not change you. The teaching will lead you where it is that you need to own. Who, what, where, when. That you need to be complete with.
Mhm.
Because just because you're finished with something, Jackie, doesn't mean you're complete with it. Complete is when you don't have any emotion around it.
Right. I say it's when you have
You,
nothing more to say about it.
yeah, you're complete.
There's nothing
You've
to
got
say.
the
There's
lesson.
no energy left. The air has gone out of that balloon.
Correct. And I mean, in order to do that, what I say is consider losing the emotion, getting the lesson from whatever that incident was. Contemplate that. Lose the emotion, get the lesson, and get complete.
And make it your own. Like make it part of you.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. You have it. Because you can't change the past, as crazy as that sounds. The past is the past.
Yeah.
You
It only
can't
has
change
the
the past.
power that the only power that the past has over you is the power that we determine to keep it alive by giving it our energy, our focus, and our attention.
You bet. And if you're not complete with the past is not complete with you.
What do you mean by that, Zalah?
Well, in other words, it still haunts you. It's still rolling around when you meditate. It's still up here. Like you didn't get the lesson that you were supposed to get from the experience. And a lot of that, quite often, for a lot of people that I've taught, it has to do with forgiveness. And I say, let me counsel you on forgiveness. First off, it's like the Buddha said, you don't hold on to a hot coal and expect the other person to burn. That's crazy. That's first. Secondly, I say no one's ever died in the history of the world from a snake bite. People in the audience go back and you see that their tongues go into their mouth and say, oh, this is going to be good. And I say, it's true. Nobody's ever died from a snake bite. You see, if a lion bit you, it could tear off your head. But a snake only puts 2 puncture marks in here. It's not the bite. It's the poison that arrests the heart and the lungs. And by you not forgiving someone, what happens is that you produce the same kind of poison.
Yeah.
And, you're only hurting yourself. Mm-hmm. And if those 2 points don't get you free, I say, then consider this. Why don't you forgive that person? And maybe not because you can rationalize that they deserve it, but maybe because you want to get free from that energy. That one usually gets it. One of those 3 does, but the third one usually goes, yeah, not because they deserve it, but because I need to get free and it's my lesson.
Yeah.
And I go, you bet. Yeah. So forgiveness is a wonderful thing.
It is. I say that acceptance is the highest form of forgiveness. Accepting that people are always presenting at the highest and best of their current and evolving capacity.
Well said.
If people could have done better, they would have done better, but they couldn't.
Not with the consciousness that they had at the time.
Not with the consciousness that they had at the time, right? They were doing the best they could according to their current and evolving capacity or consciousness.
Right.
Yeah.
So to be able to judge yourself now for what happened back then based on the consciousness you had then is absolutely fruitless.
Right.
Can you understand? And here's another premise that I love teaching on, and that is your transformation is in your acceptance.
Yeah.
No matter what's life showing you, what true teachers say, how did you become a master? I think it was Krishnamurti that said this. This is brilliant. He said it's in one sentence. It was this: I never minded what happened to me.
I love that.
Whoa.
I never minded what happened to me. I never minded what happened to the world.
Yeah, it's never minded. It's everything's purposeful. And that's how he became a master.
I think acceptance is a far too focused consciousness. Undervalued. Thank you. That's the word. It is a far too undervalued consciousness, because if you're living in acceptance, in fact, one of the things I teach in one of my courses, Living a Transcendent Life, I teach that there's really never anything to forgive. Because if you believe that life is unfolding for your highest good at all times, that life itself is benevolent, and you're practicing the spiritual quality and consciousness of acceptance, then you can see All there is to accept that that person was not trying to hurt you or trying to be bad or evil or a jerk or anything else. They were performing to the highest and best of their current and evolving capacity. Then it's on me. Can I accept that? Can I accept that? And if I can't, then the work is mine to do.
It's all about building, I'm sure you'll agree, your capacity. We're all here to increase capacity.
Yeah.
And if you're going to suppress something, because there's only two dynamics, either you're going to suppress it or you're going to accept it and transform. If you accept it and transform, you increase capacity. Because if you suppress it, I'm going to deal with it later, then what I say is that of which is suppressed must be expressed. And it's going to build on you, and it's going to reduce your capacity.
Right.
And next thing you know, you're short with everybody and everything in life. And then life treats you short.
Right.
Your life gives you short.
You get back what you're putting out energetically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one of the greatest teachings I think that there is on this is that I stand in front of the class and I say, especially the new students, it just freezes them when I say this. Do you realize when you get to the other half of the sky, God will never forgive you for what you did here? And people go, and it kind of blows their hair back. And I let that settle in for 30 seconds. And I say, you see, when you get to the other half of the sky, there's nothing to forgive. And the reason God will forgive you is that there's nothing to forgive you, because God is love. God is not about judgment. So if God isn't going to judge me for what I did back on this half of the sky, what right do I have to judge another on this half of the sky?
Amen. That is so beautiful. I want to go to one of the things you said. You said when you accept and you take the lesson, then you are transformed. And I don't want to make any assumptions about any word that you use, because every word you use is so rich and so wise and so powerful. So when you say that when you accept and accept and allow it, it transforms you. What does that look like? Transforms you how?
It transforms the way that you immediately become the observer as to how you perceive life. And I mean, if you're constantly observing what life is showing you, then eventually life does not keep you waiting against your will, which is really, really important.
Life does not keep you waiting against your will?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it means that you don't get your dreams. All of a sudden, all the people, places, events that you want to happen aren't happening, and life is keeping you waiting against your will.
Yeah.
And that weighs heavy on you, because that it reduces you. It reduces you in hope. It reduces you in capacity. It reduces you in faith. It reduces you in just your taste for the beautifulness of life. That's what it does. And we're all here to have capacity. By increasing capacity, can we help each other? By increasing capacity. But in order to do that, you have to look at life as being purposeful.
Right?
Right.
You have to have a greater connection to life being purposeful. That's so beautiful.
And if you do, it increases your capacity. If you increase your capacity, then you're a candidate to help another. And like I started with, we're all here walking each other home. We're here, but for a little while.
It's so short, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. For a little while we just help each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
In order to do that, we're best off to help each other, but with love and peace.
I love what you're saying. I think about the doorway, that when you walk through the doorway of acceptance, what's available on the other side of it is really moving from, anger, resentment, blame, frustration to peace of mind. And that's exactly what you're saying. When you're in that space of not accepting what has happened, what was what occurred, what was said, what was lost. When you're in that space of not accepting it, you are also in that vibration of resentment or angst or anger or blame. And when you can cross that threshold, when you can walk through that door of accepting that life is the way it is and that people are the way they are, and then that doesn't mean anything about you because you have a philosophy about life, then you can accept things. And it's in that acceptance that people begin to know peace.
Yes. And we're all after, ultimately, in life, the most fruitful soil of the soul is in peace and love. And how you get there is by understanding the tests that are provided to you to increase capacity by the divine, by your oversoul, and being able to look up and say thank you. Even on the most taxing of things, I say thank you. And so many middle of the nights, am I out and I look at the sky and something has happened where it's not taken the proper turn as far as I'm concerned. And I go out and I'm smart enough now to say thank you, even if I have to say it with a question mark.
Mm-hmm. That's great, right? I have a friend who's a minister, was a retired minister of a Unity Church, and she'd say, "This too is good, this too is of God, and I demand to know the blessing."
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love that. I'll use that.
Yeah,
because
this too is good, this too is of God, and I demand to know the blessing, because we don't always like it. I think this is an interesting point. Accepting life circumstances doesn't mean you're gonna, hop on the chair and grab your pom-poms and be rah-rah about it.
Absolutely.
This means you've given up the right to tell the universe how it's going to go. You've given up your right to be to withhold to hold resentment and to hold judgment. You've just given up that right. You don't have the luxury. If you're committed to a spiritual life, you just don't have the luxury to hold that over life or over another person. You're wrong. This shouldn't have happened.
Well, it depends on the value that you want to put on peace.
Yeah. So say more about that.
Yeah. Well, what happens is that if you know, and if you think about it long enough in meditation, that peace is where it's at. I mean, there was a reason why our last contemporary celebrated Master Jesus was known as the Prince of Peace.
Mm.
And peace is a bedfellow with love. And between peace and love, it triggers the fertility of the imagination in what we call, all true teachers call the prima materia. And the prima materia is a fertile imagination that gets triggered when you're in your upper four centers. So you can be in your bottom three centers, which is dualistic, or you can be in your upper four and be in your divine. So we're a spiritual machine extraordinaire, and we're all here on a journey of self-discovery of epic proportions. And right now, wherever you're at is magnified. So to be able to understand that you're here to build capacity to create, because what problems do any of us have if we can create?
Right? Exactly right.
What's the problem? There's only one crisis: the ability of not being able to create.
Right, exactly right. So I love that. And just because I'm not going to assume that everyone listening to our podcast has spent a lot of time maybe thinking about consciousness, conscious living. So when you say the bottom three and the top four, you're talking about the energy centers in our bodies.
Oh, yes.
The lower energy centers have a certain function. Yeah, no, I just, I don't want to make any assumptions about anything. And even my own listening, I don't want to assume what you mean. So when you say the bottom three and the top four, just flush that out and what it means and what the impact of those bottom three and top four are. You alluded to it here about creativity and about ideas and imagination but I think there's more here if we dive down in a little bit.
Sure, let me unpack that for you. What happens is that when we come in here as a child, nobody would ever contest that a baby is not the epitome of love. It has no fear except for the fear of falling. One fear. Other than that, it's beautiful love, and it needs to be developed, and cultured, and loved, and realized that what it is pure love. And as it grows older, it gets indoctrinated into the illusion where if I ever had a child again, I'd start saying from day one, listen to me. I'm going to keep saying this to you over and over and over till you get to be an adult. The inside world is much more important than the outside world of man-made stuff. Of man-made stuff. Go out, look at the outside world in the stars, the sky, the clouds, the trees, the oceans. Look at that word, see the eons, oceans. They've been around for a long time. Look at the lakes, the rivers. That stuff will keep you sane if you look at it. But if too much man-made stuff gets in the center of the eye,
Yes.
there's a disconnect that occurs that causes the cognitive abilities to become anything but optimized.
Right. And look at how much stuff is going in. I'm thinking of it, right? This is how our humanity is living right now with their phone in their face. How much man-made stuff is going in our eyes almost constantly now.
Constantly. And that's what causes the serious disconnect that we're experiencing on the planet because of all of the explosion of electronic media, from those televisions to radio to computers to handhelds. I mean, it is absolutely insane. The only problem is it causes you to disconnect and you don't know how to think anymore. Because one of the things I wrote about in my first book, I've written 3, is when I was away, I realized the importance of what I call the S treatment. And these are 5 S's: sitting, still, silently, at sunrise and sunset. And because you could do one of these without all the rest, but to do them all together, sitting, still, silently, at sunrise and sunset, causes the reconnect to occur in proportion to the amount that it is practiced.
Beautiful. I love that. It's so what our world needs, any form of nature, but I love that 5 S's. Sitting,
yes.
Still.
So if we could go back to these 7 centers.
Yeah, let's go back.
I took you on a loop over here for a minute.
I think I took you, actually. Sorry about that. But
Oh,
we'll just dance. We'll dance a little bit.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks. Am I okay to go back there?
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly where I was going. You read my mind.
Okay. Well, the fact is that in the older books, especially the Bible, these centers aren't called chakras. They're called seals. The Bible refers to the mighty seventh seal.
Seals, yeah.
Yeah. And so the first
book of Revelation, right? The book of Revelation talks about the 7 seals.
Yes. And so a chakra, Jackie, is an opened seal. And that's the difference. And so typically humans walk around with the bottom 3 that are open and the top 4 that are closed. And what's interesting about a baby is that in that phase, the baby grows up, but it doesn't grow old till it's about 18 or 20. Then it starts to age. And so during this time of this childhood here, the bottom 3 centers are closed and the top 4 centers are actually open.
Yeah, the imaginal field is so connected across
the
etheric. Yeah.
Because the top 4 are the divine connect from the heart up, and the bottom 3 are in the illusion. And so to understand the different properties of each one of these seals as they turn into chakras is what I teach. And then when you enter the adult phase, where everything's polarized, this is up, this is down, emotions are up and down, your life looks like a seismograph in the adult phase. During that time, the bottom 3 are open and the top 4 get closed. You're disconnected.
Right.
And so if you've had enough, like I did, you seek out a teacher that says, look, we'll get you into the 3rd phase. The 3rd phase here is the alone phase. You're going to have to spend some time alone. But the word alone comes from all one, shortened. And so if you're prepared to go to the alone phase, Then the teacher typically appears and says, all right, alone phase is better done in nature.
Mm.
And we're going to have you get complete with this second phase here, where your life was a seismograph like this, on emotions, on positive and negative happenings and the like. If you want to build capacity, you got to get complete with this second phase. So a true teacher teaches you how to get complete and go into the alone phase. And for a lot of people, they're in relationships, but they're alone. And I say, you can be alone by yourself, or you can be alone in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But just because you're alone doesn't mean you're lonely.
Right.
No. And for the spiritually advanced, they need more time alone right now. Yeah. That's what meditation's all about. But if you want to go beyond just a little 5 or 10 minutes or an hour a day, then true teachers are available to teach you why and how. Because if you don't know why, the hows don't matter.
Wait, I'm sorry. Why what?
Why you'd want to sit in meditation in this third phase to get past the second phase of duality. Mm-hmm. The second phase here is all about image. Look at that word. I'm aging. Image. That's a big part of the second phase. What are people going to think? Right. Type of thing. And a true teacher says, come on, let's get past that.
Nice.
So ultimately, the alone phase, you got all 7 centers open.
Yes. I talk about people being in some of my followers, my tribe. I talk about people, that we are monks without monasteries today.
Yes.
We're in the world, but not of the world.
Yes. Like love.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that, that you actually, it sounds like we're also not of the world for some or all of that 7 years that you were away. So did you physically leave your home, and did you see your family? It sounds like you left your career.
Yeah, I did.
I'm still back to that practical question of like, dude, how'd you do that?
Oh, it wasn't, in one sense, I suppose the term that I could use is that it was a delicious torment. It was a delicious torment. And my spirit was getting fed, but I still had a beautiful wife and beautiful kids, but I wasn't there. And what I said was, when I left, nobody would want to be around me if I didn't do this. Because I don't want to be around me.
Right. If you can't stand your own company, other people probably aren't going to dig you very much.
That's right. So was there a cost that I paid for that? Yes, there was. Did I come home occasionally? I did. But, for the majority part, it just further drove me within, because the spin on the energy, when you're a child, the spin on the energy around your body is different than the spin when you get into adult phase. And that's one of the things I teach, because as a child, this first phase, you were growing up, but you weren't growing old. What happened? What happened when you entered the second phase of image and polarity? You started to age, really. And so if you enter the alone phase, wise man once said, you must become like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. So you got to go back and develop innocence, love, the observer, which means curiosity, a light heart, and trust and presence. These are 5 key properties of that first phase of being a child. And so if you do that, the kingdom of heaven is within you. All true teachers know that. How does that happen? It happens by, you must be able to put your divine as a priority and not the illusion as a priority. So you're living in a sea of duality, and everybody wants to drown in the ocean of love, But you're sitting and you're existing in a sea of duality. And if you don't rise above it, at least, then life gets very complicated and short circuits a lot of your beingness. I mean, the best definition of love that I've ever encountered is love is the beingness of all things.
Hmm. The beingness of all things.
Absolutely.
So say more about that.
Sure. Let's go to the any atom. Let's go to the universe. The atom, universe, identical. The beingness is not material things. It's the space between the sun and the planets. That's the beingness. So you just be. There's a reason why we're called a human being. It refers to this. Not a human pasting, not a human futuring. We're called a human being. It's neutral is what being it means. It's neutral, it's non-material, it's spiritual. And those who believe in the invisible can do the impossible.
Oh, I love that. That is so rich. Those that believe in the invisible can do the impossible.
Yes.
I love that. It is a Bible quote that I love, that faith is the evidence of things hoped for and the substance of things not yet seen.
Beautiful. We're saying the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's not me. That's a Bible quote. I'm sorry. I forget the reference right off the top of my head, but it's that I think about a lot, and exactly what you're saying. When you believe in the invisible, then you lean into
you can do the impossible.
You can do the impossible. Because
Yes.
the invisible is where life is getting created. It is at the level of energy and vibration.
Yes,
it's created.
It is. It's in the beingness that the invisible is. It's the distance between the sun and each one of the planets. That's the beingness right there. And every flower that's got atoms is the beingness. And what happens is that ultimately what true teachers know is how to create. So if I go from my spiritual body to the spiritual body of the plant, that's an annual plant in the fall, and I go from my spirit to its spirit and direct the DNA of that plant, it will stay green all winter.
Wow.
It requires serious instruction. So it's called spirit to mass. And that's what true teachers can teach.
Wow. Spirit to mass. Is that what you said?
To mass, yes.
Wow.
Right.
I want to take that on.
I hold classes.
I'm sure you do. Are your classes online now, Zalah, that we're in the pandemic?
Yes, they're online.
That's
you bet.
That's
you can come to our, the entry point is we have a 10-part consciousness accelerator, and it's 10 parts where I teach 15 minutes of class, but it's rich, just like we're talking about here. It's very rich. And there's a homework session. So there's 10 of those. And then right in the middle, there is people that phone in and ask me questions on the spot.
Nice.
And they can ask me whatever they want, and I'll answer them. And that is included in there. And it gives people who have taken the course a real substantial, solid footing of what it is that I'm teaching at the Center for Transformation. Because once you're finished the Consciousness Accelerator, then I've got 3 certified consciousness coaches that teach 3 classes each for a total of 9 classes in what's called the Spiritual Awakening class number 1. So that is a paid for recorded class. You take it in your own time, and it's 9 classes. And then you can interview each of the facilitators as well. These facilitators, I've trained them for 10 plus years, if you can imagine, because I teach right from basic spirituality right through to quantum mechanics. I teach all the way through.
Beautiful. Zalah, so thank you for telling us about those courses. I'll have you at the end tell us more about where to find them. I
Yes.
want to just shift a little bit, because we're living in such a fascinating time. You call it the quickening.
Yes.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on just saying a little bit more about what is happening from your perspective, but then also, what would you recommend? Because so many people are suffering, so many people are really struggling. So what do you say are the ways that people can make this passage through the quickening in a gentler, more loving kind of way?
Sure. You have to remember that love is the answer. We all came from love. We're going to return to love. It's a matter of what we experience here in the face of the illusion and the reason why they call it the illusion. And if you're disillusioned, I can teach you. If you're disillusioned with the illusion, how do you rise above it? Love is always the answer. Can you look at everything as being purposeful? Can you look at what life is showing you as a test to increase capacity? Can you possibly understand that pain is part of the journey, right from the first spank? Pain is part of the journey, but I say suffering is optional.
Mm-hmm.
It's optional, because if you keep reviewing how bad things are and how much they hurt and where you're getting the short end of the stick, well, you have to realize there's a master's law. And here's the law: if you're suffering, that of which you contemplate expands.
Right.
So if you're contemplating not what I learned from this, if you're not contemplating how can I increase my capacity, then what you're doing is that you're suffering. And so the idea is to contemplate love, because love is freedom, actually. Love is freedom. And so if you look at some of the people that have been suffering the most during the, camps in World War II and the likes, you know what? They finally realized they could have death every day. And what they did was they realized that I'll focus on love while I'm here, even though they may come and put me in a gas chamber, even though they may take my life. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be loving. If this is my last day, I'm going to be exemplary, because the best way to pass a test is to take the test.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And don't take it miserably. Take it with the Mona Lisa smile and look at, okay, this is my opportunity to give love, and this is my opportunity to expand. And thank you, God, for this. I don't really understand yet, but I'll accept it. So many times I went out to the sky and I said, I don't understand, but I'm smart enough to know that I just need to accept it and say thank you, and I'll understand why later.
Yeah.
But the human quite often wants to understand now,
why?
upfront,
Right.
upfront, then I'll say thank you, or then I'll accept it. No, quite often the reverse is important. The invisible is more important than the visible. and it goes like that. Spirit is much more important than material matter.
Yeah.
So we're all going back to childlike properties in order to become optimized. You must become like a child and enter the kingdom of heaven. To be able to understand the property centers of each one of these. What happens in the pineal gland as the wafers start to shake and calcium is being discharged and the DMT molecule is being discharged, and the brain is starting to open the thalamic gate, which is like New York Central Station. This is a whole different study about what can happen within the magic of us. But it's all about going within, and it's about saying, all right, I've had a pretty good taste of life. Now I'd like to go within.
Nice.
And I'd like to be all I can be.
So that's the path forward then, as we go through this quickening, is for people to strengthen their relationship with the unseen by going within, by meditating,
Yes.
Prayer, journaling, contemplation. Yes. Yeah, does that pretty much capture how you're seeing it?
Absolutely. I mean, suffering is a choice. Can you just say, if this is what's required for this pain, for me to grow, then I'm with love. I'm with love. And I know that the best way to pass a test is to take the test.
Yeah.
And I'm prepared to do that.
Yeah.
And so, God, I'll do this. And a lot of people have come to me and said, life has just driven me to my knees. And I always come back with the same answer. And I say, that's the best place to start.
Right. That's a beautiful place to begin. Yeah. Because then the ego gets quiet, when you've really, when you've gone through that, when you've had those experiences, then
Yes.
you have that place where maybe, just maybe, the ego will quiet down. And when the ego quiets down, that's the emergence of the essential nature. And
you have it. We're on the same page. It's beautiful that we are. And, the ego, I say, to most people, do you know what it stands for? And a lot of people say no. And I say, well, if you're in your ego, you're probably in that second phase of the image and going up and down duality. Ego in my mind stands for edging God out.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I love that. Edging God out.
And
There's no
yeah,
real God. It's all
there's
material. It's the material.
yeah, yes. And so it's a loss quite often of image or money or material things that causes the recalibration to occur. We're in a society right now where it's a serious recalibration going on of so many humans, and they've got to get reconnected. And so many don't know what to do. And that's why your show is such a great gift to humanity, because I've seen some of your guests and what it is that you're doing here. And I mean, we're all singing off the same sheet, different words,
Right.
but we're all singing off the same sheet. You got to put spirit first.
Yeah. Well, let's keep singing that far and wide, Zalah. I'm going to assume that people want to know more about you, get to know you, work with you. How is it best for the Conscious Living podcast listeners to track you down and find you and your work?
Thank you for that. Google us. We're on the CFT.ca. Just Google the CFT.ca. You'll come to our site. The site is fairly extensive. It's very robust.
Nice.
And you'll be able to see some of the talks that I've done on there. You'll be able to see a TEDx talk. You'll be able to get a pretty good feel for the depth of us on the site itself. Now, remember, there's courses that you can take electronically from wherever you're at in the world, provided you can speak English. And that is, there's the Consciousness Accelerator. That's the first basic course. And it's a very, very good course. And then if you like that, you can take the Spiritual Awakening #1. And we're about to launch the Spiritual Awakening #2. So these are extensive courses. I mean, they're extensive. And once you've gone through Consciousness Accelerator, once you've gone through Spiritual Awakening 1, Spiritual Awakening 2, then we speak the same language. I can teach you if you want to continue. But by going through these courses, it gives you a pretty good feel for, do I want to join this troop, this tribe, and meet like-minded people or not? So we give you a pretty good taste of what's going on before you ever want to make that decision, is what we try and do. Plus, there's books out there. If you search me, I've got 3 books out. I don't know if you read my latest book called The Big Three. Can I cover that for 5 seconds?
Please do. Yeah, no, I'd love to. And I will read it, Zalah, but we only met like a week ago. I know it feels like we've been hanging around longer than that, but we just met about a week ago. So I will hop on Amazon right after this and bring it into my world. But please say a bit more about it.
Okay, well, The Big Three is about what everybody's up against right now. And I say, your divine or your oversoul is going to meet you at every dead end, even if you have to die to do it. And the Big Three is where things are being depreciated in three categories right now. 3. For a lot of people, it's 1, 2, or all 3 of them. Where financial being degraded. Things are getting tougher financially. Relationships being degraded. 3rd is health. So so this one here can be a slow death, but ultimately it's death. And what I say on each of these is that life will bring you to your knees, even if you have to die to do it. Your oversoul will be there and meet you at every dead end. And so it's all about these 3 forming you to decide that you're going to get up and just get on your knees and do this and just connect. You want to go this way rather than be on a polarized form of duality here. So it's called The Big Three, and the subtitle is How the Divine is Trying to Get Your Attention.
Nice. I love that. I love that, Zalah. And that's your most recent book.
It is.
And then you have several more coming out over the next year or 2, or maybe sooner. We talked about that a couple of days ago. Like,
yes, we did.
They're ready to go. Maybe you don't have to wait that long. Anyway, Zalah, thank you so much. What a delight to spend time with you, to have you on my show, to bring you forward to my tribe and my listeners. And I'm so grateful to know that you are in this world, bringing this vibration, bringing these ancient wisdom teachings into the world. And I look forward to continue to collaborate with you and get to know you more.
Thank you so much. I'm humbled, and I've spoken from my point of ignorance.
There you go, which is filled with wisdom. All right, take care now.
Namaste.